What's up, my guys and geeks? Thank you so much. We just hit 100 subscribers on Geek Space. Hooray! Truly amazing. We had like 20 plus something subs in just the last week alone, which is mind-blowing. Thank you all so much. And I decided that I had to do something pretty epic for 100 subs special. So today I decided to hop in and I'm going to rank every single MCU project, movies, TV shows, special editions, all of that, from the worst to the best. Let's do this!
Let's do this!
And here we go.
If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for the next time I upload an awesome video. And be sure to comment down below what your ranking of all the MCU projects is, which ones are your favorite, and which ones are your least favorite. Let's get right into it. Alright, so as you can see, we've got our whole tier list, every project updated to Guardians 3. We got the S tier all the way down to the F tier. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to go from the F tier up. So I'm not going in chronological order. I'm just going to rank them in the order I have them. And we'll keep going from there. Let's do this. All right, in absolute last place, my absolute least favorite MCU project has got to be Thor: Love and Thunder. Just watched it the other day. It is unbearably annoying. It is overly goofy. It takes everything that wasn't great about Ragnarok and amplifies it times 10, and wastes Christian Bale as like just this villain with such an inconsistent characterization that it's honestly kind of embarrassing.
Another classic Thor invention.
And right above that, we've got She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Now, I was so excited about She-Hulk. I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. A legal sitcom with Daredevil returning in the MCU should have been like the perfect project for me, but they decided to turn it into this weird like satire thing where it seems both of these projects seem more like satire than actual parts of the MCU, which is just depressing at this point, but they're just absolutely horrible.
No! A normal amount of rage!
And the last film in the F tier, I reserve the F tier for like truly my least favorite, like the MCU films that are patently annoying to me. And Thor: The Dark World it's so forgettable. It's literally the most bland movie in the entirety of the MCU. It's beautifully made. There's nothing wrong with it as far as a production standpoint, but it may be like the most boring story I've ever seen on the screen.
It's brilliant, Thor. It's truly...
But moving up to the E tier, we've got Captain Marvel. If you've seen my reactions to the trailers for the Marvels, you know I wasn't that big of a fan of the first Captain Marvel. It's slightly better than Thor: The Dark World because they did take a unique spin on the whole origin thing with the amnesia bit, but there's no character there. Captain Marvel is like literally a plank of wood. No disrespect to Brie Larson, but they just didn't give her any character arc or journey. It's just, I was strong, cocky, and confident in myself. Now I realize I have even more reason to be strong, cocky, and confident in myself, and I know who to aim my fists at. That's literally the entire arc of this movie.
And I'm gonna put my foot in a place it's not supposed to be.
Right above that is Iron Man 2. And, you know, it kind of hurts putting this one this low because it's actually a decent movie. It's just too scattershot and too disorganized to go any higher. But it's not a bad film. It's just, it's not a good film either. It's mediocre right near the bottom of the pack.
Watch the road.
I got it.
And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier is next. Even more so than She-Hulk, this one disappoints me. Winter Soldier, one of my favorite MCU characters. Baron Zemo, so hyped to see him back. Falcon, always consistent, always consistently great. And then they made this show more about making the villain sympathetic than actually giving us a story. My favorite part, disturbingly, turned out to be John Walker, just because he was actually providing like some energy to this all and not just trying to be like, let's calm down, let's talk this out. Even though she's killed multiple people, we can still have a peaceful diplomatic discussion with her. That's not a villain. That's a side character who maybe you need to explore more. But I need an actual villain in my series.
You've got to step up.
Next up, in the last film in the E tier is Black Widow. Where are you? Disappointing. Taskmaster should have been one of the greatest MCU villains we've ever gotten. Taskmaster from the comics is so incredibly cool that this film should have been B or A tier. We're getting one of the last few original Avengers that didn't have a project is getting a project, and we got Taskmaster as the villain, and we got Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, still the best part of this film, but that should have been so much better.
You do like a fighting pose.
I just don't understand how Marvel keeps dropping the ball in phase 4. In phase 4 and 5, takes up 4 out of these 7 bottom tier projects, which you can tell just phase 4 and 5 has not been very good. Next up, we got D tier. D tier is going to kick off with Thor in the bottom spot. Nothing against this film. D tier seems kind of rough, but it's noticeably better than these films, which are noticeably better than these films. So it has to be D tier because it's also noticeably worse than the C tier films. D tier feels kind of harsh, but Thor, it's just there. It just doesn't do anything or like captivate me. I'm ranking this off of how often would I want to go back and rewatch that project. And honestly, Thor is not the most rewatchable for me.
You are an old man and a fool!
Next up is Eternals, and this project wasn't great. I'll say that. It was not great by a long shot. It was very boring, very drawn out, but it's not as bad as everybody's saying. Everybody's like, "Oh, this is the worst MCU project." It's not patently offensive in the way some of these lower tier projects are. So it's not the bottom for me because like Thor Love and Thunder like grates on me every time I watch it. If I had to, I could watch Eternals. It's boring, but it's not gonna drive me nuts.
Better though is beautiful. Very, very good.
But next we've got Werewolf by Night, and this one, it's just not for me. I wouldn't rewatch it, but it's a really good project. It's really well made. It's a really interesting like horror twist on the MCU, even more so than Multiverse of Madness. This is like really the MCU's horror project. So it's not bad. It's just not for me personally. It drags a little bit too much, and I don't like the black and white as much as like someone with different tastes might. But this is like probably the best made, best story, best overall project we've had so far.
Nice werewolf, good werewolf.
Next is Ant-Man, and I was kind of shocked that the Ant-Man films ranked this low for me because Ant-Man's a pretty decent project, but just to me, like the main things that stick out about it is that the villain was all right, but not amazing, and that there was just a lot of cussing in this movie, to be honest. This one just sticks out to me. We watched it as a family like 4 years ago for the first time. So like my younger brother was only like 8 years old, and they were just cursing all over the place. It wasn't the most pleasant experience. So a little bit of bias there. Still a very good film, and Paul Rudd is like one of my favorite actors in the MCU. So this is nothing disrespect on him, just the film's not my favorite.
I'm Ant-Man.
And then right above that, we've got Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I'll just cut to the chase. Then we've got Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. All 3 of the Ant-Man films, I don't know. They don't do anything special for me. They're all just there, casually sitting. I don't have a problem with them. None of them offend me. But they're just not they're not going to drag me in. Quantumania is my favorite just because of the characters that are in it. The fact that we got Kang and MODOK, who are both like interesting characters to me. Although the first 2 movies are definitely funnier, but this one just has more of an epic scale, which is what I want as opposed to like the small stakes heist film.
And I will burn them out of time.
And finishing out the D tier, kind of pains me to put it this low, but it's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And I just felt like, so the beginning, the whole part where we're dealing with the grief over losing T'Challa, which is obviously a reflection of losing Chadwick Boseman, that unfortunate, rest in peace. But after we get past the whole opening beautiful funeral scene, it just kind of drags to me. Namor is a cool villain, but I feel like it's way too slow-paced and focused on having dialogue-y scenes. And Shuri is not my favorite protagonist. She drags this movie back a lot for me because Angela Bassett, her roles as Queen Ramonda may have been some of the best acting I've ever seen in the entire MCU, but just Shuri as a protagonist, nothing against the actress, just the character with the rage and the atheism and all of this and that and everything. It just felt way too negative for me, to be honest.
I am queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone!
Moving to the C tier, we've got the Incredible Hulk. I don't get the hate for this movie. It's not great, it's not brilliant, it's only in the C tier. It's an average MCU film. Sure, it doesn't feel like an MCU film. It was made before the MCU was the MCU, but it's a solid film that I actually really enjoyed as kind of like this more spy thriller with super monsters as opposed to all these crazy CGI, whatever this was with the split kicks and screaming goats is supposed to be.
Give me a real fight.
But next up, we've got Iron Man 3. Mandarin twist, terrible. Rest of the movie, not that bad, actually. Pretty good action flick, pretty well written. It's just, the thing that drags it back is, one, it doesn't bring anything super special to the table, and two, the Mandarin twist is a bit off-putting.
And you'll never see me coming.
Next up, we've got, what do we have here? Doctor Strange. This is a good film. It might be it's least memorable out of these C-tier films so far because it's literally the MCU formula with magic. Visuals are beautiful, storytelling is beautiful. I like Caecilius as a villain a lot more than most people seem to, but just there's nothing super special there. It's literally the MCU formula. Literally, Doctor Strange is Captain Marvel, Iron Man, and what else we got? Captain America, First Avenger, Thor. It's literally all those films, but with magic, basically. And this is like one of the weaker ones of the Marvel formula storytelling, but at least it's not like offensively boring or anything.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Next up, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. My least favorite out of the Guardians films, but still a very good, very solid, fun film. Just not as interesting to me as the first and the last of the trilogy. It's just, I feel like the second one was kind of like just a connector that got us from point A to point B. I didn't fall in love with it as much as I did the other two Guardians films.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
Next up, we got Thor Ragnarok. And this one's really gone down for me in light of Love and Thunder, because Love and Thunder just takes everything I kind of didn't like as much about this movie and drags it way down. Plus, Hulk was one of my favorite parts of this movie, and we didn't get as much of him. I didn't like Valkyrie much in this movie. We got more of her. I didn't like Korg as much in this movie. Korg turned out to be like my least favorite character possibly in the entire MCU after this whole thing was over. I would honestly watch The Eternals 10 times over before I would watch another scene with Korg in it, to be honest. Just that's how bad Korg is as a character for me at this point. Hela's great villain, so just middle of the road MCU film.
I am the god of thunder!
Next up, what do we got? Spider-Man Far From Home. Definitely the weakest out of the Spider-Man trilogy. Good film. Mysterio's a great villain. Love Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Always love when he shows up. Mysterio's actually like a really great villain with the whole trippy mind illusion sequences, but just it just doesn't bring enough for me. It's just kind of bland, flat there. I do remember I got to watch this opening night. First MCU film I actually watched in theaters, so great experience for me, but just the film itself is just kind of there, middle of the road.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
Next up, B tier, we got Spider-Man Homecoming. Love the twist with Vulture. The twist with Vulture, one of my favorite parts of this movie, and it's just amazing. It's fun to see like the different take on Spider-Man. I don't love a Spider-Man story with all of these other characters, like Iron Man's on the poster. I just feel like it gets a bit cluttered, but as an MCU film, it works. As a Spider-Man film, it works, and the Vulture is a great villain.
I'm trying to save you!
Next up, Hawkeye. Great series, little bit underdeveloped. You should have introduced Kingpin sooner. It has the problem of being 6 episodes, like a lot of these Disney Plus series, where 6 episodes just isn't enough. Like Clint Barton, Kate Bishop is probably one of my favorite like breakout MCU stars that just break out MCU new characters. As far as like the sidekicks that have been introduced, Young Avengers. She's one of my favorites, so that was a great series.
You're a Hawkeye.
Next, we got Captain America, the First Avenger. Just a classic, just a classic. Red Skull is amazing. It's just a classic MCU project that's really great, and I just love to watch it. It's very rewatchable for me. Red Skull's a great villain, so honestly, I never minded it as much as some other people. Peggy Carter is great in this movie. Peggy Carter is probably like my favorite of the like romantic interests that we ever get in the MCU, so she's great.
I'm not kissing you.
Multiverse of Madness is next. And I gotta say, this one should have been a whole lot higher. This one should have been a whole lot higher. You got Scarlet Witch as a villain, incredibly interesting. You got Doctor Strange. I was never all that hyped for America Chavez. I literally couldn't care less that she's in the film. But this should have been a really good face-off. And then you got the Illuminati and everything. But you just didn't do enough Multiverse of Madness for my Multiverse of Madness project. Across the Spider-Verse did you way better. Way better fulfilled the actual title of this film, which is kind of sad.
Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four.
Next up, Miss Marvel. This ranking is literally not for the quality of the project. The show itself is not that great. This is literally just because I liked Miss Marvel so much as a character that it elevates the entire series in my memory. I don't know why. I just found Miss Marvel as a character in the entire world she's got with her family and all these people around her and her friends Bruno and Nadia. I'm mixing her up with Nakia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but just her friends and her family and that entire dynamic I found very enjoyable, even if the villains were like ridiculously underutilized.
I share the same name as Carol freaking Danvers.
Next up, we got What If. What If, man, just a fun series. We got Captain Carter. We got the Doctor Strange episode was beautiful, honestly. That Doctor Strange episode, for me, was the best Doctor Strange content we've ever gotten in the MCU. But the live-action Doctor Strange is a better fleshed-out character because of the more development. But that was the best Doctor Strange content we've ever gotten in the MCU. And I will take disagreements in the comments down below.
Oh no, 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 Christine. Come on. Christine.
Next up, what do we have? Avengers Age of Ultron. Where are you? Most disappointing Avengers film, but still, obviously, a very good, very high quality film. Loved Quicksilver in this. Loved the Avengers repartee, especially since we never really get this lineup back together until Endgame. And even then, it's not the same lineup exactly. But I just like this film. It feels a lot better in comparison to like the MCU has become overly drawn out. This is where we start to see a lot of the problems with like the humor and stuff, but it's not gone as far down the path as some of these way lower projects.
That's the best you can do!
Alright, next I put Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. No. Okay, the Guardians have more of an emotional through line than Age of Ultron does. These two projects are very close for me, though. Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, fun little Guardians adventure, and it did a wonderful job of setting up Guardians 3, which you'll see a lot higher on the list. So, pretty good project, just, it's only a holiday special. It can only give you so much in comparison to, like, hour-long TV shows and hour-long movies, but it's a very solid holiday special.
We're the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Next up, Black Panther. Beautiful film, beautiful theme, amazing villain in Killmonger. CGI is not great, although it looks spectacular compared to She-Hulk's. But just an amazing film, really enjoyable. This was my first MCU film. This was my introduction to the MCU. My parents went and saw this in theaters, and they thought it was so good that they had to introduce me and my brother to it, and now it's spawned a whole channel talking about superhero stuff. But just an amazing experience. I really loved getting to watch this movie. It's really good. It just doesn't have the same love for it that I give to some of these other films that have a bit more of an emotional or action-based through line for me. The main pull of Black Panther is its themes And while I appreciate themes, I prefer a film that draws me in either with the emotion or with like the action and spectacle and visuals of it. So that's just my opinion personally.
I never yielded! And as you can see, I am not dead!
Next up, we got Loki. Loki was kind of a surprise for me. I didn't know how much more of Loki I could take. Honestly, I didn't know how good it was going to be. But the introduction of He Who Remains, great. Mobius, one of the better Phase 4-5 introductions. Miss Minutes was fun. The whole TVA structure was very trippy, very interesting, and huge implications for the future of the MCU. So yeah, great project.
He Who Remains.
Next up, I got Moon Knight topping out the B tier. Moon Knight could have been so much better. That finale episode was really underwhelming, but just it's really great. Like the kind of like almost horror psychological thriller vibes of this guy who doesn't know what's happening with his own life, who's strapping himself in and then waking up in other places. Just an amazing experience, the psychological trippiness of that.
Moon Knight.
Bottom of the A tier, what do I have? Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Great film. Probably one of the best Phase 4 films that didn't like continue an existing franchise. In fact, I think it might be, yeah, I think, so this is my favorite MCU project from Phase 4 that was not continuing with characters we had already seen in the previous in the Infinity Saga. So this is a really great film. It's just it had the burden of being like the origin story, and origin stories for me, with the exception of one that's going to be up here, origin stories for me are just never as exciting as when you've got the established characters and you can get right into the character development and whatnot.
Is this what you wanted?
Next up, what do we have? Iron Man. Like I said, this is the best origin story in the MCU. Classic, basic, straightforward. It's just really amazing to see how well this project stands up. I would gladly rewatch Iron Man over every project that's lower down on this list. It may not have the most spectacle, but it is by far probably the best written project on this list so far. Black Panther's pretty close, but best written project on this list in terms of just giving us Tony Stark's story and setting up so much of what is to come. Are Robert Downey Jr. best casting the MCU's ever made. He is Iron Man. I will never see anybody else is even like vaguely close to him.
Trying to rid the world of weapons. You gave it its best one ever.
Above that, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Great introduction to these characters. Funny, hilarious adventure, and it sets up so much of what makes, as you can tell, Guardians 3 is my favorite Guardians film, so much of what makes Guardians 3 an amazing project, and it's just an incredibly solid MCU film.
What are you doing?
Next up, I got Spider-Man No Way Home, and honestly, for me, the first act of this film is boring. Everything before we get to the spell gone wrong and all the cameos and other appearances from different universes is so boring to me. But those last two acts where you got Green Goblin and Doc Ock and Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and the Lizard and a better Electro and all these other characters being thrown in, that is an absolute banger. So that's probably one of my favorite like back halves of a film. And it's probably one of my less favorite front halves of a film, so we'll balance it out and put it in the A tier, because it was just so great to see the other Spider-Man back. It was just so great. It's gotta be A tier at minimum.
Poor Peter. Too weak to send me home to die.
Next up, we got WandaVision, my favorite of these Marvel TV shows. Funny, they got it right with the first one, and they have not been able to do it as well since. They've had some very good attempts, but they've not been able to do it anywhere near as well since, in my opinion. WandaVision was just great, like a psychological thriller, and finding out that Wanda is the one who did everything to all these people, even though you could kind of sense it coming for a little while, finding out that she's really the villain of this whole thing, and Agatha Harkness is like literally just a fortune seeker trying to leech off of what Wanda did. finding out that she's the true villain of this whole thing is just amazing. Just an amazing twist, an amazing reveal, amazing way that they built up her emotions and made it so that this is not an illogical jump. You can see her going from point A to point B because every project you see her in, she's losing a relationship or a person that is fundamentally closer to her. Every time we see her, she gets more broken, and this is just, well, almost. This is, Multiverse of Madness is the bottom of her depravity, but this is where you start to see how dark all that pain can really make her.
I can't feel you.
Next up, what do we have? We got Captain America Civil War. Nothing's ever going to beat that airport sequence in terms of sheer coolness to see all these heroes going at each other. Zemo, amazing villain. The implications for the greater MCU, simply fantastic. So this is just an amazing project.
I don't care. He killed my mom.
And then topping out the A tier, we've got Avengers. Avengers, incredibly solid project. Introduced us to the concept of team-up movies. It's just, it's so good. It stands up so well. I find it amazing that the same person made this and Justice League, which I don't even know how to reckon that. But Avengers succeeds everywhere Justice League fails. It's probably because the cast has better chemistry. They just bring it together, tie it together way better. And it's an amazing start off to the MCU. And you picked good having Loki as a villain. You picked the best possible returning villain you could get, set up Thanos, and brought together like the top tier of MCU talent, especially with like the big three, Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. This is before Thor got too goofy for me, so just an incredible experience as a film.
Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?
Bottom of the S tier, which is still mighty high praise for it, but bottom of the S tier, I have Avengers Endgame. Parts of this movie kind of drag for me, but that third act is incredibly spectacular. It's a little long for me as a film as far as rewatchability goes, but you can never get tired of that third act, seeing all the heroes step in and realizing what's happening. It's just amazing.
I am inevitable.
Third place, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Oh man, this was brilliant, this project. Just the amount of emotion, the amount of development. I don't get very emotional with movies. I was near tears. One of my friends who I went to the movie with was actually like crying in his seat. That's how emotional this one is. Both in the emotions you feel seeing Rocket's backstory and everything, and also in like the disgust it makes you feel in the way that certain characters are being treated, and in the way that like animal cruelty especially. Just such an emotionally driven film, even if the plot is a bit out of wonk, with out of more like just like showing up and being a plot device basically.
He says, welcome to the frickin' Guardians of the Galaxy.
In second place, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. This is just my classic favorite like solo MCU film. The spy thriller, Hydra taking over. Captain America is one of my favorite MCU heroes. Black Widow doing her spy intrigue thing. Nick Fury at like the prime of his being Nick Fury. Just an amazing project.
You're my mission.
Then finish it. Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
And of course, in first place, Avengers Infinity War. Nothing. You are going to have to find me a pretty amazing movie to top Avengers Infinity War. Even like Across the Spider-Verse, if it was on this list, it would come in second. It would come between Winter Soldier and Infinity War. Infinity War is an amazing film. I love the team up. Thanos is an incredibly intimidating villain, and just the team up aspect and the stress and the tension you feel as the Avengers are fighting for these stones. And it seems that there's like so many times where it seems like they're gonna win, they're gonna win, they're gonna win. They figure something out, and every single time Thanos outsmarts them, outpowers them, outmaneuvers them, and he ends up winning. And just the snap, the sheer shock of it all makes it the absolute best MCU film I have ever seen.
You should have gone for the head.
But alright, that's my ranking of every MCU project, as you can see from the top to the bottom. This is a pretty incredible list. MCU's pretty consistent. They've been kind of stinking it up lately. But yeah, these are my top MCU films ranked from the worst to the best. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for 100 subs. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell so you can see the next time I upload an awesome video. I'll put the link to this tier list in the comments down below if you want to make your own and send it to me on Instagram. I will share to my story some of the best tier lists that I see if you tag me. And be sure to comment down below what your thoughts are on this tier list. What are your favorite MCU films? Some of your least favorite? And yeah, if you want to see my tier list ranking of all the MCU heroes, you can click on this side of the screen. And if you want to see me break down the 10 characters I need to see in James Gunn's new DCU, you can click on this side of the screen. But you only got 3 seconds because the video's about to end. Adios!